Thank you very much for joining us here today, and I appreciate you guys taking the time with the time change. With the chairman's schedule, we had a change from 6 o'clock tonight until 1 o'clock this afternoon, but it's great to have you people here. My name is Smitty Pignatelli. I'm the state representative for the 3rd Berkshire District, and I'd like to welcome you to my district and welcome to the Lenox Town Hall. It's hard to believe right now, but if you can envision, was where my father played high school basketball, in this very auditorium. And before we renovated it back in 2001, that balcony was a little much further back. But if you can imagine a high school basketball game here, was really quite interesting. My dad would always tell me the story that they had the heaters all around the outside of the wall, and if they ever had a bad call from a referee, they would start arguing with the referee and back them up to the hot radiator because the referees used to wear shorts. So there's a lot of history here with my family and my dad, but I'm really quite honored to have you guys here. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues all the way from North Adams, Representative John Barrett, and from Pittsfield, Representative Tricia Farley-Bouvier. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize our governor's counselor, Tara Jacobs, also from North Adams. This is like an overnight trip for the North Adams folks, so I appreciate them taking the time to be here. Chairman Michael Day, Representative Michael Day from Stoneham, has been on a statewide tour of Massachusetts, talking about gun control and what we can do for education and information, and I really thought it was important for him to come out here to the Berkshires to understand those same arguments from a rural perspective and not just the inner city situations that we hear from all over the state or certainly on the big news that we have around. So I wanted to get a rural perspective, and I appreciate him and your team coming out here today to continue listening to it. This is your last stop on this listening tour. So before we get into the panel, I'm going to have Chairman Day say a few words, and then our two panelists, the Chief from Dalton, and Tom Decker from North Adams again, or is it Adams? Adams. But I know there's a big difference between North Adams and Adams. So, but really, thank you all for being here. Hopefully it's an information gathering forum. We're going to have some presentations from these two folks, and then we're going to get some Q&A and see what we can do to help shape any pending legislation that the legislature might be dealing with over the next few months or the next year. So without further ado, my great colleague from Stoneham, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Michael Day.
Thank you, Representative Pignatelli, very much. What a wind-up that was. Thank you all. Those who have been with us on this tour, I see some familiar faces, are going to hear very familiar words. As Smitty said, we are at our 10th and final stop on the listening tour. We've covered every region of Massachusetts here. Smitty was the first to reach out to ask us to come out here. So thank you for doing that. Representative Barrett and Representative Farley-Bouvier as well. We're all insistent on getting Beacon Hill off of Beacon Hill and coming out and listening to the different areas of Massachusetts, and really were the genesis for a lot of what we ended up doing here on this listening tour. So I want to thank you all three for your leadership on that end as well. As Smitty said, I'm Michael Day. I'm the state representative for Stoneham and Winchester, which is way back near Boston, 10 miles north of Boston. But thrilled to be out here in the beautiful Berkshires with you all today. I'm going to provide you just a quick background of what we're doing on this listening tour, why we're here. Then I'll introduce our great panelists and let them share their insights and thoughts. And then we'll open it up, as Smitty said, to the public, because this truly is a listening tour for us. It's been invaluable to us to hear different perspectives around Massachusetts. I've said this at every stop, and I'll say it again. We are incredibly fortunate to live in Massachusetts. We have got the greatest education system, the greatest healthcare system, the highest standard of living in the United States, and we have the lowest rate of gun deaths in the continental United States. We've got a strong network of laws that encourage responsible ownership, common sense system that I believe preserves our residents' constitutional rights, while also ensuring the safety of our communities here. The system, though, as we all know, is far from perfect, which is why the legislature is undertaking this effort. Recent changes from the Supreme Court, as well as advances in technology that are allowing would-be criminals to evade the laws that we have on the books. We face significant challenges here in Massachusetts, and that's across the Commonwealth. We have got communities that are facing challenges that are not novel and are not limited to firearms as well. Mental health, substance use, drug-related organized crime has been with us for some time, and they impact all of our communities equally. We've all felt the effects of it. Many communities in Massachusetts are now dealing with a significant spike in organized crime. which is resulting in unprecedented levels of gun violence. We see the headlines every day. We also hear regularly from responsible gun owners, collectors, hunters, that the laws in our books are sometimes confusing or outright contradictory, which makes compliance almost impossible from their perspective. Federal landscape changes every day with new cases, and other states have different systems of law as well. So that's part of what brings us out here today. That's why Speaker Mariano has tasked me, as well as our colleagues in the House, with taking a comprehensive look at our firearms laws, what the impacts are on the residents of Massachusetts, whether our laws fit into the federal landscape and how they interact with our neighboring states as well, so that we can ensure the safety and rights of all of our residents. So in addition to traditional research, as Smitty said, we are on a listening tour. This afternoon's discussion is the 11th and I believe final stop of this tour before we retreat back to Beacon Hill to start dissecting some of what we've heard here in there. Hunting, sport shooting, gun collecting are pastimes pursued by many, many Americans. These activities can offer lessons in responsibility, leadership, environmental stewardship, and our shared history, instructive on our shared history here. We've heard clearly from many in this community that our statutes, as I said, are complicated and confusing, which makes compliance very challenging for some individuals. We've heard several times that law-abiding and responsible gun owners sometimes feel penalized with the myriad layers of laws that we've got on the books here. So today our objective is to hear directly from folks who own firearms, who use them for hunting and sport, and people who enjoy collecting them and are familiar with their history. To get some insight from that community as well. We've come out to beautiful Lenox to be closer to some, as Smitty said, some of that rural part of Massachusetts, to gain that perspective, where hunting and collecting and sport shooting is more prevalent than perhaps certainly in Stone, where I'm from. So we've been to Cape Cod, we've been to Worcester, Greenfield, Brockton, Lowell, Roxbury, Framingham, New Bedford, Lawrence, and last night we were in Springfield, and we're ending it on a high note out here in the Berkshires with you all. So we come to this listening tour, everyone in this room and everyone watching at home, with different perspectives on this. Using those perspectives and sharing our thoughts with each other, while doing so in a frank manner and respectful civil discourse, is essential to our democracy. And it's part of why we're reps, to come out and listen and engage in productive discussion with our constituents, with our neighbors, with our friends. So I recognize that it may ring hollow to hear an elected official say that this isn't intended to be a political discussion, but it's not. We're here to listen. My colleagues and I are here to listen to you all and to take that feedback back with us as we begin to debate ourselves on what we should be doing here moving forward. I'm going to introduce our panelists now, but again, I want to just echo the words of thanks to our representatives for bringing us out here. So Rep. Parley-Bouvier, Rep. Barrett, Rep. Pignatelli. This is the Berkshires delegation, and they're here in force because they want to hear from you as well as I do. So I want to thank them very much for coming out. I also want to thank Chris Ketchen, the town manager, for making us feel welcome here at Lenox Town Hall, the former basketball court. And I want to thank Jack and Cecilia from Community Television from the Southern Berkshires for recording today's event and making it widely available. Much appreciated. So our panelists, and Tara Jacobs obviously as well from the Governor's Council, Joe Yokohama from the DA's office as well. Thank you both for coming out here as well. Our panelists, Chief Deanna Strout has been a member of the Dalton Police Department for 25 years, took over as chief in 2021. Along with her job as chief, she's also, and here's a litany of the multi-hats that the chief wears. Currently working as a sexual assault investigator, a DARE officer, a SAIN interviewer, S-A-I-N interviewer, and today covering patrol for an officer who's got a mother's birthday to here too. So a five-tool player in our chief here. Chief Strout's highly involved in the community and recently received the Jared Downing Service to Children's Award for extraordinary contributions to the youth of Berkshire County. Chief, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And to the chief's left, to my immediate right, is Tom Decker, who's the owner of Pete's Gun Shop in Adams, family-owned business since 1956. Tom's been involved in the firearms business his whole life, having started shooting over 60 years ago. He's an avid firearms collector, trainer, shooter, hunter, and Second Amendment supporter. He's been an NRA and Mass State Police certified firearms safety instructor since 2010, having taught several thousand students the basics of firearms safety. Tom, thanks for joining us as well. I'm going to give you the mic now and get out of the way so we can hear your perspectives. Chief, maybe you want to kick it off? Or Tom? Sorry, Jeff's spot on that.
That's okay. I'm kind of used to that. So good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate the invite to be here. It's perfect timing. So as I said, I've been a police officer for over 25 years. I like to tell everyone I started when I was 9 years old. But I recently became the chief of police, and what that means for me is I'm the licensing authority for the town of Dalton for firearms permits. And so anyone who resides or has a business in our community, they would apply to get a license to carry. And that process is pretty in-depth. We do a significant background check. If they're a new applicant, we take their fingerprints, we submit them to the Massachusetts State Police, we submit forms to the Department of Public Health, we run our own in-house check. So anything we have in our history, our system with this individual, and we run checks for warrants, criminal history, federal criminal history. So we do a significant background check, and then we submit all of that to the state, and they double check our work. And if we had missed something somewhere, they'll come back and say, not a good candidate, or they'll say, hey, we agree with you, it's a good candidate. So we do a significant background check, but I appreciate you having me here today. So I'm happy to answer any questions from any of you. You're up.
We do the first step before her, in that, as I do, as well as many other instructors across the Commonwealth. We teach the basic firearm safety that is certified by the Massachusetts State Police and the National Rifle Association. I am a National Rifle Association basic pistol safety instructor and also certified by the State Police. And our courses are the same. We teach the course to the students, give them their certification, their certificate that they completed the course, and they go see the chief of their municipality, who is the issuing authority, and exactly what the chief said that she does. Once the person has their license to carry or FID card, the FID card being for long guns only from the age of, it gets issued at 15 for possession, and it can be used for purchase at 18 for long guns only, low capacity long guns. And then at 21, they can get their license to carry, which qualifies them for what they call a pistol permit, license to carry a handgun. And then they come see us to buy a gun, or somebody else like us. And the procedure is much the same as what they go through here. They have to give us prove that they have their license to carry, so they present that to us. And then they have to fill out the ATF form 4473, which is a background check form. And that form is constantly evolving. It just went through its latest change on April 1st, which added a couple more levels specifically focused toward preventing straw sales and purchases. The form asks for all their personal information, name, place of birth, their address and such, and their citizenship. But the biggest thing on it that gets into the background check, and it asks a bunch of pointed questions, such as, are you the buyer of this gun, or are you buying it on behalf of somebody else? Then it asks, are you purchasing this firearm for sale to somebody else, of the type of person that is listed in questions 21B through 21N, which pertains to felons, fugitives from justice, people who have been dishonorably discharged, people who have been adjudicated mentally incapable of their own affairs, and stuff like that. And then it asks you, are you purchasing this firearm for the specific use of furtherance of a felony? And it goes on and asks, have you ever been adjudicated as mentally incapable or committed to a mental health institution? It asks if you are an unlawful user of marijuana, bearing in mind that even though it is legal in your state, it is still a federal felony. It asks if you have been discharged from the military under less than honorable conditions. and so on and so forth, all the way down the line. And then it is transmitted electronically to the FBI, and the FBI then does the background check. Background check can take anywhere from 5 minutes, 3 minutes, to 3 days or more. And then it comes through with one of three responses: proceed, that the applicant is approved for receiving the firearm, and then the other one is denied, meaning that there is no firearm to be transmitted to them. They never tell us the reason. We are not privy to the reason. Hopefully the person in question knows what the reason is. But the third option is the delay, which is a 3 FBI business day delay, where they go through the farther in depth into the person's file, where they are opening up pages that are not necessarily needed to be opened to get the original background, the first approval done. And then after 3 days, we are allowed to transfer the gun, should we so decide to. It is up to us. It is our prerogative. We do not have to give them the gun, even if we haven't received a response from the FBI. By and large, I would say 98% of our delays that we see all come back with a decision, yay or nay, within those 3 days. After that, it is, even after we give a gun to, if we so chose to transfer a gun to an applicant that was on the delay, we still might hear back from the FBI saying, a total of 6 days after the initial application, stating that it is now a denial, at which time they get the applicant's information from us, and then they send out a law enforcement officer or 2 or 3 to visit that person and essentially take their guns, if they have any, find out what they were doing. We do not have any information whatsoever, either before, during, or after, why somebody might get a delay or why somebody might get a denial. We have been trained by the National Shooting Sports Foundation to learn how to recognize a straw purchase. This is also where we've been trained according to ATF guidelines how to do the same. And we have also put our own checks and balances, shall we say, into effect to try to avoid having somebody buy a gun when they're not buying it for themselves, when they're trying to buy it for somebody that shouldn't have it. Other than that, we do the training. The training that we do is the basic pistol course from the NRA, which is a live fire course. What else can I tell you? One thing that we see a lot of in the media is people say that, felons are buying guns. Well, if they're buying guns, they're not buying them in gun shops. I have not yet had a felon come into my gun shop to buy a gun, because the first thing that they do when they come into my gun shop is they have to prove that they have a license to carry, or they don't even look at my guns. That's the first thing we do. So the good thing there is that we have the licensing system in place in Massachusetts that at least precludes a bunch of that happening. The one thing that I see happening here, we get people that are denied getting a gun, and they have a license to carry. Well, how does that happen? One instance that I can think of, and I see it happen quite a bit, we get a buyer that comes in that has their license to carry or FID card, and they want to buy a firearm. We go through the background check. They fail the background check, and they're denied by the ATF or ATF/FBI. The FBI does the background checks on behalf of the ATF. The person is denied, and it turns out that the person is denied and still considered a prohibited person by the ATF FBI because that person has had something like or similar to a DUI. In Massachusetts, a DUI prohibits you from owning a firearm because it's punishable by 2.5 years for the first offense. There are a lot of different offenses in the state that are punishable by more than a year by your first offense. And if you're convicted of a crime that could have been punished by more than a year in jail, per the ATF, that is a prohibited factor. Massachusetts has allowed people to apply for and receive their FID card and LTCs under certain circumstances after going through a whole bunch of other hoops that they have to go through to get their rights back, but the ATF still doesn't allow it. I have a problem with that because these people have paid their debt to society, and they get a DUI and they lose their firearm rights forever, while they still get their license to drive back again and again, or whatever. There's got to be some better check and balance there, and it's not just with DUIs. There are other crimes as well that have the same effect. But the good thing is that we still have the background checks. We do not sell guns without background checks. There is no way that you can buy a gun online without a background check. It has to, if you went online and buy a gun from Idaho, shall we say, it gets not sent to you, it gets sent to a dealer in your state where you have to go get it and do the background check. So there's a lot of checks and balances, both federally and state, that are in there that help you out, help the law-abiding people out. And all in all, I don't think it's a broken system. I think the system works pretty well. There's always room for improvement. The background check system works pretty well. I've been doing this for decades. I have probably seen maybe 20 denials and tens and tens and tens of thousands of gun transactions. And of those 20 denials, probably 4 or 5 of them were mistakes that the ATF/FBI made and they fixed later. The other ones were, one reason or another, they were denied. And that's good, because they shouldn't have had them, and they got caught. And I guess we'll leave it at that. If you guys have any questions, please ask.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be the mics here, right?
Except for the television.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm probably loud enough not to need anybody. I'm hard of hearing, so I speak loud.
The television image, but I want to thank you both for being here. But to help out the chairman and his team who's been working on this thing, I'd be curious from both of your perspectives that we heard the chairman talk about some of the current laws are somewhat complicated, contradictory. Any suggestions from your job as a police officer or yours as a business owner to help the chair and his team kind of address some of the misconceptions or the conflicts that may be coming out of these current laws?
One of the things that I see in my community is people have a juvenile conviction, and it's a non-violent juvenile conviction, for a larceny, for example. And, this gentleman I'm speaking of has had his permit for 37 years, and suddenly the state changes the law, and now he can't have a permit. And we have never had an incident with him ever. He's a wonderful person. And I think something like that needs to really be reviewed, because a larceny is not a violent crime, especially when you're 15 years old. And I just think, we need a little bit more case by case instead of just that blanket. It's a felony, no. And I just think, we need to look a little bit harder at, the type of felony. And, because a larceny back then was something over $250. And, now it's certainly a much higher value. But back when this person was 15, and the specific example was his friend had stolen a flag, he was holding it, he got caught, he got charged, and boo-hoo years later, suddenly he loses his permit. And I think that's just a bad example of how our laws work. And I would like a little bit more input as the chief of police and licensing authority to say, hey, no, this is a very upstanding person in our community, and I understand this, but these are the circumstances. So, it's just my take on that.
I would second that. I would also piggyback on that. It's essentially the same thing I was talking about with the DUI, which in and of itself, unless it causes bodily injury, is a non-violent crime. The problem that exists is fixed sentencing, because with the DUI, I'm using this because I know a lot of people are caught up in this now. With the DUI, there's a fixed sentence for the first conviction of 2.5 years, which puts it well over and above the 1 year maximum that is allowed to keep yourself from becoming a prohibited person should you get convicted of a crime with over 1 year of potential sentencing. So that if that issue was fixed, it would address this issue that she's having. And I see that a lot as well, with people that had juvenile convictions, with people who had a simple assault conviction where somebody got into an argument in a bar room and or was protecting their significant other's honor and such. And lo and behold, 35 years later, their license gets pulled, and we get a call from the local police department to go pick up all their guns and put them in storage, and so on and so forth. So that is a definite true issue. The other thing that I think is in the laws was Chapter 180 of the Acts of 1998 created the Handgun Safety Act, which is good. But one of the things that it created was the approved firearms roster. The approved firearms roster was ostensibly to prevent the sale of Saturday night specials and cheap handguns. The guns that are on the approved firearms roster right now are very good guns. They get there by the manufacturer having to have them tested by an independent testing lab at the expense of many thousands of dollars per specific firearm. The problem is that, let's say Smith & Wesson makes a 1911, and that 1911 gets approved by their testing lab, and then it gets added by the Gun Control Advisory Board to the Massachusetts approved firearms roster. Cool. So now we got a Smith & Wesson 1911 on there. But we have, let's say, Wilson, who makes a much higher grade gun than Smith & Wesson does. They just don't make as many. And they chose not to try to get it onto the Massachusetts roster. But it is a far better gun. The roster is limiting the, I don't know how to say it. It is limiting the business capabilities of gun shops in Massachusetts by preventing them from selling a lot of very good guns, very safe guns, and firearms that are not dangerous by whatsoever means at all, but firearms that the manufacturers thereof have just chosen not to jump through the hoops to get them approved. The fallout of that is that there are a lot of stuff out there that is being ghost gunned into this state, and that is a tough situation. Ghost guns, by their very definition, are home. What's the federal government called them now? Personally manufactured firearms. I think PMFs or something like that.
Privately made.
Pardon me?
Privately made firearms.
Privately made firearms. And by the federal law, those are legal. There's nothing wrong with them. The problem comes along when a bad person, a prohibited person, gets them. I don't know the solution to that. I have no idea what the solution to that is, but I know that in my own heart, I feel that the solution is not to take away the rights from law-abiding people. If we didn't have people out there making firearms or making whatever, whether it be a new type of automobile engine or whatnot, if we didn't have that free enterprise, we wouldn't have new products. By taking the ghost gun, the PMS, out of law-abiding people's hands, simply to prevent a bad person from getting it, that's not right. We need to figure out another way of preventing the prohibited person from getting that without taking the rights away from our law-abiding people. And I don't know what the solution is. I have no idea what that is. Sir.
To the chief, I spoke last night in Springfield.
Hold on one second. I'll just ask anybody who has questions or comments just to state your name.
Microphone's dead.
Michael O'Day.
The microphone is dead.
Oh, dead.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Not working.
Okay, we'll steal yours. The home of the millionaires can't get a PA system that works. Well, I just want to say, if you can just state your name and where you're from, so we can have some documentation of that. That'd be very helpful. We'll see if we can get another live mic. Thank you.
I don't have to give my name to a police officer, correct? My name is Ray. I'm from West End. Okay. I spoke last night in Springfield, and it was very difficult. Very difficult evening, right? And my point last night I tried to make. Is this thing working?
Yep.
It is.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm hard to hear too, so I don't know how long I'm taking. Right? And my point last night I tried to make was, regardless of laws we have on the books, if they're not enforced, it's a waste of time. Less than 20% of firearm-related charges in Hampton County are ever prosecuted. 2 more people were arrested last night. One for shooting up his neighborhood, and the other one because they were suspicious they found a loaded gun in his car. Unfortunately, they were both in high crime neighborhoods. I don't know how else to say it to be played. I'm sorry, right? Do you have the same problem in Berkshire County with lack of prosecution? And I said last night, it's not the cop's fault. He writes it up. It's not the judge's fault. He only rules on what's presented. It's the district attorneys who are not doing their jobs. Do you have that problem?
If you asked me that a year ago, I would say yes, we have that problem. We have a new DA who is absolutely fantastic. He works with law enforcement, and I think he's an extremely reasonable district attorney, where he doesn't feel jail time is necessary for everyone, and I don't mean to speak for him, but he works with law enforcement, and I do see the prosecution of crimes definitely on the rise, and we as law enforcement could not be happier with DA Shagru right now. Just good communication, good teamwork. So no, we don't have that problem in Berkshire County.
Is that okay, Don?
Go here and then right back.
My name is Bill West. I'm a dealer in New Marlboro, and the one thing that I've had some of the folks ask me about is a crossover on the game laws and the carrying a firearm laws. In Massachusetts, the properly licensed person that has gone through a class like Tom or myself or teach, and they can carry a firearm anywhere that's not prohibited. You're not in your whatever places. So, but you can carry your firearm in your car, you can carry your firearm on your motorcycle. But if I decide to go for a ride on my ATV or my snowmobile or my boat, I'm not allowed to carry my personal protection firearm because of the fact that override, that overlaps onto a hunting regulation. You can't be on your quad or on your boat with a loaded firearm except for pursuing a cripple, I guess, for duck hunting or something. But there's got to be something with that. We're not in our orange with a handgun on when it's supposed to be shotgun season or something like that. I can still understand that for the hunting season type thing. But there's got to be a way. I mean, I personally, one of my cars isn't worth anywhere near as much as what my boat or my snowmobile or my ATV is worth. So, and you're always hearing about it with trails, people get jacked for what they have, and you can't protect yourself for your property. But it's just that I don't know whether that would come in to how would you do anything with that time? You think just you'd have to make a definition in the game laws that it's for the hunting thing, but if you were recreating, people have the side-by-sides and they have their family with them, and they can't protect their family on a trail ride with 100 other people or stopping at places to eat and things like that. So that's just something that I'd like to see someone look into, but I just don't know who.
Chief, I have a problem with what you said. Thank you for your honesty, right? It's a mandatory sentencing thing.
I meant all crimes. Like, he's just a good, we have a very good.
You either have an LTC in your pocket, or an FID, or you don't. Yes or no, black or white. Justice is supposed to be blind. Granted, I'm only a retired electrician, right? I don't know a whole hell of a lot, so try to be honest. And how can you, and the problem comes when he's a good kid, this and that. Yes, he might have been a good kid. Yes. There's a point in time where you have to enforce the rules, and I know it's a difficult thing, particularly in a circumstance like where we were last night, because then mandatory sentences is a bad subject there, right? Because we're picking on somebody, and no, we're not. All the rules are just either for everybody or they're for nobody. I'm sorry, Chief. I don't see how you can say yes or no.
I didn't say that. So you're actually taking words out of my mouth?
I apologize. I didn't mean to. I misunderstood you.
I definitely did not say that. Do you need to have that? So what I did say is that you asked me about the prosecution. The prosecution has gone up. I don't care who someone is. We enforce the law. That's it. So the rest of that is out of my lane. It's out of our officer's lane. So we make the arrest, they do the prosecution, and that's where it goes. So when I said my comment, I think what you're misunderstanding is when I relayed my feelings about our new DA, he has a great sense about him. So gun laws, if it's a mandatory sentence, he prosecutes, and he's fantastic. But other crimes, I'm saying he doesn't always think everyone needs to go to jail, which I'm a great believer in second chances, but not with mandatory sentences, and certainly not gun violence.
Hi, I'm Vicki Zakarowicz. I'm the local lead of Berkshire County Monster Demand Action. Thank you. We're a nonpartisan, grassroots gun violence prevention organization comprised of gun owners and non-gun owners. We support responsible gun ownership and advocate for gun safety measures to keep all of our families safe. I did not say gun control, gun safety measures. Although gun violence is a huge problem, there are many common sense measures that we can take, including the following legislation. Now, the first one on my list is combating ghost guns, and to your point, maybe there needs to be some sort of accountability if someone does make a ghost gun to try and serial number that in some sort of way. There are 4 bills, though, in front of the legislature, S 1496, H 2360, S 1509, and H 2312. We have to fund the collection and analysis of gun crime data that regards to House Bill 2307, promoting secure storage of firearms to parents in all Massachusetts schools, Senate Bill 305. This has been very successful in Pittsfield and Williamstown. The educators are happy about this, and it's a win-win for everybody. We can't afford to lose our educators. We need to codify a list of sensitive places, things like where alcohol is served, where children are present, town halls, churches, etc., to keep people safe. We need to require that live fire practice that we spoke about earlier for everyone going to get a gun license. That is not codified right now. Using Medicaid dollars for community violence intervention programs, House Bill 1199, creating a violence prevention trust fund, House Bill 2297, and stop protecting gun manufacturers from lawsuits. So pass House Bill 2380, the Firearm Industry Accountability Bill. And I do want to mention also that I have a bunch of cable locks, so if anybody needs a cable lock for their gun, please see me after. They're free.
Regarding the
TV's needed. The
TV, all right. Just a second, I gotta turn my curtains down. I'm sorry, but this blows my ears out with the hearing aids. Okay, regarding the ghost guns, again, I don't know what to do, but I do know that there is one thing that we have to make sure that we don't do in the legislation. And again, I'm not as well versed as you are on various bill numbers and such, but there has been occasion to some of these bills to include provisions to prevent someone who owns a firearm from substituting a part. You break a trigger, so you can't put a new trigger in it because it has to be serialized and such. You want to change the barrel, you want to change the stock so it fits you better, or whatnot. You can't do that. We have to make sure that if somebody owns a legal firearm, that they are able to take care of it. They are able to modify it within legal limits. I'm not talking about making a fully automatic firearm. I'm talking about changing the length of pull of the stock. I'm talking about I want to give it to my granddaughter to use, and she's 15 years old. She's small, so I need to shorten the stock for her. This type of thing. We need to make sure it doesn't include that kind of thing. Regarding training, I believe in training. When I'm giving my classes, the one thing that I point out to all my students, I say this is, the reason that we're here is obviously to teach the majority of the people in my classes. I'd say probably 60% have never even touched a firearm before. They're going to be new gun owners that have never experienced firearms ownership or use before. So we're trying to teach them safely. But the other big reason that we're there is to make sure that we are educating gun owners as to how to be safe and keep our children safe. Our children are our most precious resource, and we need to keep them safe. And then I go on to say, and I truly believe this, that the best way to keep our children safe is not to tell them, you shall not touch this. This is evil, this is bad, this is dangerous. No. You're not going to let them touch it without your supervision, but we teach them. The key to safety is education in our children as well. I am a Boy Scout leader. I teach our troop, I teach our kids firearm safety. And that is absolutely imperative in my mind. I have offered to, I won't name the school districts, but I can tell you there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones that I have offered my services to free of charge on a signed up basis, not required, but anybody that wants to partake, to have the students within that school take firearm safety, and I have never yet been taken up on it, ever, not once. I think this is very important to keep our children safe. And obviously this is one of the biggest subjects today, is to cut down on gun violence and keep our children safe. And to me, the education is imperative.
thank you all for being here. My name is Gabriella Sheehan. I've been an educator in Berkshire County since 2010, and I'm just going to speak to S305. As Vicki mentioned, we are going to all of the school committees in Berkshire County asking them to please implement a formal written ask of parents to open up a dialogue around gun safety. You're here to get a perspective from a rural community, and I just want to mention, as a K-12 teacher in Berkshire County for so many years, we are not shielded from poverty. We have many, many students who are coming from communities that are in need. And we also, on 3 separate occasions as an elementary teacher, I had a 6-year-old come into school with a loaded gun for show and tell. Not long after, I was at a middle school where a handgun was removed from a student's locker with loaded magazines. And again, at a high school, 2 years later, a student actually discharged a weapon off campus and came back to campus with that weapon. And in every single one of those cases, you create victims of entire communities. The children are traumatized, the teachers are traumatized, and we're in a state of education where teaching is in crisis. We do not have enough educators. And so additionally, adding on this layer of feeling unsafe in a school community and children feeling unsafe is creating all kinds of mental health crises as well as a teacher shortage. So I really appreciate you coming out and just echoing what I'm sure you've heard from some of the larger cities, that the state of education, we need change. We need to feel safe in our schools. Thank you.
My name is Brian Linden. Grew up in Lee, lived in Lee almost all my adult life, hunted for years. I'm not against hunting, it's a great sport. It's more about the hunt than the kill for me. Just being outdoors and enjoying that was great. But I just wanted to just mention one thing about, you had mentioned about teaching your kids gun safety. Absolutely, I totally agree with that. But for me, I feel that safe gun storage is even maybe more important than that, because kids are kids. They're going to be curious, they're going to be playing with their friends, and oh, I know my dad's gun keeps it up here. Well, let's practice and play with it and see for Army guys. Or if you have that gun securely stored, they can't get to it, and that doesn't violate anybody's Second Amendment by securely storing a gun. That will help eliminate those. We've all heard the stories of 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-olds getting a hold of the gun, shooting their friends, shooting themselves. And it also reduces suicide in our county and our state. So we really promote safe gun storage in those instances. Educate the kids, absolutely. But kids are curious. They're going to get into trouble. Those of us that are parents and grandparents and whatever, they're kids. Kids will make kids' mistakes. So that's just my thought on that.
Thank you for mentioning the storage. I did not mean to give the impression that I'm against that. Okay, that is actually part of my class. The classes that we give are required by the state in order to get both either an FID card or a license to carry. The course is an NRA course, and then it is certified by the Massachusetts State Police. And we have made adjustments to the course to reflect the requirements of Massachusetts. And one of the things that we teach is safe storage. All right. The cable locks that you have, we have them by the thousands at our shop. The local police departments are very generous in giving them to us, and I give them as part of the Operation Child Safe, Project Child Safe. And we give them out to anybody that wants them from our shop. All of our guns that we sell come with a lock. It actually leaves our shop locked. No, I don't need to get that locked. I'm going to put it in my... No, it's going to get locked. And here's the lock, here's the key, and off it goes. What you do with it once you leave here is one thing. It leaves here under the safe conditions. Gun storage is a key. I mean, we all remember when we were kids, you don't touch that. Well, as soon as mom and dad left the room, you know what we did. I personally have no problem with safe storage of guns. Would I like to have my guns displayed on my walls in my gun room? Sure. But unless my gun room is a vault, no. I wish I could do that, but it's not, in today's day and age, it's not applicable. It's not possible anymore. We sell safes. We sell all kinds of gun safety equipment as far as storage is concerned, and I think it's a big thing. It is. I have many gun safes at my house that are under lock and key or a combination and such. Simply because I have it just me and my wife, but that's not just to keep me and my wife safe, it's to keep them from falling into the hands of somebody should some lowlife break into my house. And this is the way we sell our guns. And as far as I know, there's not a dealer in this state that doesn't do what we do as far as gun safety is concerned for safe storage. It is a requirement. We are given a handout from the state of Massachusetts that we give out to people about suicide awareness. We give out the handout about firearm safety and storage. We have a poster that is in our shop that is right where the people that are filling out the Form 4473 are looking at it, that it's right smack dab in front of them, that specifies, or for the state of Massachusetts, requirements as to what safe storage is and how to accomplish that. All this stuff is very good. It all boils down to what the gentleman over here said about how many laws do we have in this state? Lots. Lots and lots and lots. Last I heard there were like 450 pages of gun laws. And they're not all enforced. A lot of them are contradictory. A lot of them are archaic and obsolete. A lot of them are not possible to be done. Some, and I am not a lawyer, so I cannot sit here and quote chapter and verse about how the thing should be interpreted and such. But having to have to work with the laws every day, and believe it or not, I do get phone calls from police departments asking me, hey, is this legal? Because I deal with this, and other dealers like myself do every day. I get calls from other dealers asking me. I've been very outspoken about this at other times and other places within the state. I truly believe in safety, and I truly believe that education is the key to safety.
I'd be remiss if I didn't welcome KCPs from Senator Paul Mark's office as well. Thanks for joining. And given this is the final stop on the tour, I wanted to just address, we heard a few times here that our laws are 450 pages on the firearms law. They're not. We've gone through them, and Alex O'Connell, our deputy counselor, has gone through them back and forth. I can assure you they're not 450 pages. They are complex, which is why we're doing a deep dive review on them. I think what you're referencing is a guidebook that has quite a few examples and case illustrations in there.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Hamilton, and I live in Pittsfield, and I came to listen today. I did not expect that I would be taking the floor and saying anything. Perhaps because I'm not as well versed as many are with the chapter and verse of laws and things that are happening in the State House. But I do have some concerns. Your name is Representative Gay, is that correct? Sir, when you began to speak, you mentioned the importance of sport ownership, collecting, hunting, when it comes to issues, and what you wanted to hear about from the rural citizens of Berkshire County. You didn't mention the element of personal protection, which is a very important concept, also enshrined in the rights of the Second Amendment of the Constitution. And I've not been a gun owner for very long. I took my gun safety course at Pete's up in Adams. But as a citizen, I'm concerned about many things, not the least of which is the responsibility that citizens have when it comes to caring for others when you're in a public or private location. I feel and felt that arming myself and being a responsible concealed carry individual was an important thing for me to do as a citizen. And I have found out several things, but one of which is that I've become very conscientious about how I approach people, always seeking peaceful solutions, especially when I am carrying. When I'm driving my automobile, it is a burden and a responsibility to be extremely cautious. And I think that's important. I think a lot of gun owners feel the same way, that as they carry in a public venue, what they seek to do is be an instrument of peace and responsibility at the same time. I don't want to get too carried away with that, but I think responsible concealed carry gun ownership is an important thing. I did not have any difficulty getting a permit in the state of Massachusetts. I've been a responsible citizen here most of my life. However, I do feel, and there was some mention in the announcement of this, with the Burns, the decision, the recent decision of the Supreme Court. Bruin. I was going to say Burns, but that would be incorrect. Some mention of that, so I do stand in response to that and in favor of Massachusetts not being a may issue state, but Massachusetts becoming a must issue state, because I believe that that is purposeful and cognizant in the framing the Constitution for good purpose, that the individual citizen would have the ability and the right to protect themselves from other individuals who might seek to harm them or their families, and also from the possibility of a rogue state that would seek to take those firearms and that protection, that personal protection, that family protection, that civil protection away from a responsible citizen. Last of all, I want to say I'm very concerned with the safety of our children in our schools and wherever they congregate. And I don't know if any of these legislations that you mentioned have anything to do with this, but I'm extremely in favor of having a skilled, trained, ultimately trained individual in those schools, at least one of them, with firearms to keep our children safe. I have traveled in Israel. And in Israel, wherever you go, you see people with firearms. You see young people congregating on the evening after the Sabbath. Young people who are conscripted into the service and have automatic weapons with them. When you sit in a taxi cab, the taxi cab driver has a firearm there. Me and my family and I have never felt safer than we were when we were traveling in the state of Israel, which is a place which is even more violent in a lot of ways than the United States. And I only bring that up to say that the Israelis, from what I understand, are very serious about the protection and care of their children. People don't get into their public schools without a thorough check of the things that they are carrying, and there are armed officers in their schools protecting their children. I think that the state of Massachusetts ought to think seriously about their responsibility in that regard to protect their children in that way. And I thank you very much for the floor and for having this meeting. I think it's an important thing. And I said, I wasn't expecting to get up at all, but I thought just an individual citizen's opinion might be a valuable thing.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Galeb. I live in Lanesboro, and I'm going to try and make this coherent. Okay, it's like three threads to try and keep organized. The Supreme Court ruled recently that firearms that are in common use are allowable in this country. And I want to approach that in two different directions. The first is for home defense. There are 19 million AR-15s legally owned in this country. In Massachusetts, you can't purchase one. There is not a better home defense gun for elderly, compromised, people who aren't very strong, and for safety of others in the house. There isn't a better home defense gun. It has single shot stopping power. Through FBI statistics, there are between 1 million and 1.6 million home invasions a year with armed perpetrators. And in those, approximately 300,000, somewhere between 25 and 30%, are injured or killed. And sometimes it's a suspect and sometimes it's the victim. Okay, and there isn't a better home defense gun than that. And for years after the assault weapon ban, the quote assault weapon ban expired, our legislature had no problem with it expiring. And then in 2016, on the way to the Democrat National Convention, the Attorney General made a dictum that she considered AR-15 platforms assault weapons, and they're banned in Massachusetts. The gun store owners had to get them out of their shop by the end of the day. And so now in Massachusetts, you can't buy an AR-15 for home protection. Let me go on. The other side of my story or question is regarding handguns. There are tons of handguns that are legally allowed in just about every other state. And Massachusetts severely restricts the guns that you can buy. And we talk about gun safety, and we talk about personal protection, and there are two aspects to this. One is for somebody to have to purchase a suboptimal gun for their particular body and style and strength impacts their safety. And a gun that may not be as reliable as one that they could purchase in another state may have a reliability issue when they go to use it. So that's the second part of my thread. And then the third part is the limitation to 10 rounds. In the government statistics of armed home invasions, less than 50% of those are committed by one person. Of the more than 50% that are committed by more than one person, almost 40% of those are the intruders are 3 or more. And a 10-round limitation in a home defense situation is just untenable if you're facing three intruders who are armed. And so I don't understand where the 10-round limitation comes from. It just sounds like an arbitrary number that somebody thought was good. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you a question. Do you know where it came from?
Before my time. We're looking at all those laws. That's before our time.
Okay. And I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Hathaway and I live in Pittsfield. And I'm educating myself about a lot of these issues still. I'm on the school committee that just adopted the safe gun storage resolution in Pittsfield, and but I know I have a lot more to learn. And I have a question based on something I read a long time ago, and I'm curious whether this is still in effect. On June 24th, 1991, Governor William F. Weld signed into law an act relative to exemptions for non-resident purchasers of certain firearms and ammunition. This act made the purchase of a long arm or ammunition legal for any non-resident who was 18 years of age or older when acquiring a rifle, shotgun, or ammunition from a licensed firearm dealer, provided that such non-resident is in compliance with the law of the state where he resides and has the proper firearms license if required. And of course, this example has to do with a shooting in Berkshire County in 1992, where the shooter showed the clerk his Montana driver's license, the sole document required for the purchase of a gun in Montana, paid the requisite amount, and walked out the door with an SKS rifle. He returned to the small New England college where he was a student, took a test, ate dinner, then went on a shooting rampage. He wounded 4 people and killed 2. So I'm curious whether that non-resident loophole is still the law of the land in Massachusetts, or whether a Montana resident, the example in this book, would be subject now to the Massachusetts background check rules.
That's a very good question. In 1991, yes, that was made legal, and there are other states that allow purchase by non-residents of long guns. First off, federally wise, and this is the law of the land in all 50 states, you cannot buy a handgun in any state unless you live there. You can only receive a handgun through a transaction within your own state of residence. So if Mr. Lowe from Montana had tried to buy a handgun, he still couldn't have bought a handgun, only a long gun. Okay, so that was the law of the land in 1991, and it still is in many other states. In 1992, in response to that, the state of Massachusetts made a new law, and it wasn't a loophole, it was a law that allowed that, but then they stopped that in 1992. As of then and now, still, if you want to buy a firearm in the state of Massachusetts, you must be a resident. Now, I'll give you a real good example. I live in Vermont. Okay, I owned a business in Massachusetts. That's where I inherited it, and I live in Vermont. I own the gun shop in Adams. I cannot sell myself a gun. I cannot sell myself ammunition. We have another dealer's license in Vermont, and that is where I use to transfer firearms for people from Vermont, which I get a lot of due to our location. If somebody comes into our shop from Vermont and wants to buy a rifle, yes, I can sell it to you, but not here. We transfer it from our Adams shop to our Reedsboro shop, and then they go there and do the paperwork. And that's what I have to do. So I can't even buy a gun from myself owning a gun shop here in Massachusetts. So that has been addressed and corrected. You cannot buy ammunition if you're not a resident. I cannot sell ammunition or guns or there's 3 things: ammunition, guns, or feeding devices, which is what the state of Massachusetts refers to as a magazine, refers to as a feeding device. All 3 of those, none of them can be sold to a non-resident. Even if they have a non-resident license to carry. The non-resident license to carry that is allowed to non-residents so that if they're spending time in Massachusetts, they can get that. It's available. They still have to get taught through the class that we teach. That allows them to carry a firearm and ammunition for that firearm in Massachusetts, not to purchase. You cannot go into a gun shop with your non-resident license to carry and buy ammunition. It is for possession only, not purchase. So that situation has been addressed, and it still is as such in Massachusetts. I don't see that changing at all. And the interesting thing is that based upon one of the things that was mentioned earlier about sporting and hunting purposes, so we have somebody, let's say from Vermont, that comes down to Massachusetts to hunt. They do not need a license to carry or an FID card. They just need to be a non-prohibited person. And they can buy a hunting license, and then they can come to Massachusetts with their shotgun to go hunting deer, let's say. If they run out of ammunition, they are out of luck. They have to go back home to Vermont to get their ammunition. They cannot get it here. That's a good question.
Thanks. I don't mean to dominate the conversation here. Again, my name's Brian Whitman. This is really for our elected officials. As far as internet sales, there's a website, I haven't been on it in a couple of years, similar to Craigslist, but it's called Arms List. And it's recommended a background check be done on Arms List through a dealer. But private sellers can sell on Arms List, and it may have changed. Like I haven't been on that site in a couple of years, where you could search in your area for a 9mm handgun, let's say, and you could find a private seller that has one, and you could meet, let's just say, in McDonald's parking lot, give that person cash, and you have your gun now without a background check. And I was just wondering if that's something you had looked at or addressed as far as online. I know it's really difficult as far as online sales, but.
Okay, so regarding personal sales in the state of Massachusetts, regardless of the venue or mechanism that facilitates it, if Mr. West has a handgun that he owns, or a rifle, a firearm, let's say, and you want to buy it, and you're a Massachusetts resident, and you have a license to carry, he has a license to carry, the state of Massachusetts still allows face-to-face transactions as such. There are requirements with, as everything, that what you're supposed to do, whether it does get done or not, that's another issue, or whether people follow, whether somebody from, let's say, New Hampshire comes to Massachusetts and tries to sell a gun face to face. It's illegal, but people break them. That's why they're called criminals. The thing is, if the proper procedure in what you're describing, he has a firearm that you find out that he's got for sale and you want to buy it, you can buy it from him face to face in the McDonald's parking lot. But there is a procedure called the FA10 form, the Firearms Application Transaction Form for the state of Massachusetts. And it can be done online, accessed electronically, where the seller has to enter his license number and his PIN number. You have to enter your license number and name and date of birth, the firearms information, the serial number, the make, and everything else about the gun, and then submit it to the state. And the end result is that the state finds out that that transaction took place exactly like they find out from us when we sell you a firearm from our shop with a background check. We use the same FA10 to report that on the state side. The background check is done through the federal side. The FA10 is done to record the transaction, which a lot of people call it registration. The state says it's not registration. They said it is merely the recording of a transaction regarding that firearm, but it still records it, and so we utilize the same mechanism.
Everybody's done. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the 450 pages of gun laws, or if it's a manual. There's no better person to delve into this than Chairman Day and his team. He's taking this very seriously at the 11th stop of a statewide tour. I'm really very grateful that you've come. You didn't say, oh, you have to show us 100 people before we'll come. You're here to listen to every voice. I very, very much appreciate it. I certainly learned a lot today myself, mostly perspective, but also some interesting facts that I didn't know, the details of, for example, of the background checks and that whole procedure is really very helpful to me. I will tell you, in listening to my constituents from Pittsfield, there's two things. One, we need to update our laws, because gun safety laws, because technology has been updated, right? And what I know there's been talk about the ghost guns.
And I don't know exactly how to do it either. That's why we're turning to Chairman Day to do it for us. What I care about is that those who are in possession of ghost guns are following the same law as everybody else. That's what I care about. I want them to have the same background checks. I want to know where they are. I want to know if they transfer to somebody else, all the same things. And that's where I think where we have to solve that problem. And the manufacturing, the mass manufacturing of ghost guns is another issue that we know is happening in Massachusetts. And then the other thing is, I really believe that gun violence is a public health issue. And it should be treated as a public health issue. And one of the first things we do with public health issues is collect data and report data and look at trends. And so I'm very much hoping that anything that we do in the legislature includes those things. So that's from my constituents, Mr. Chairman. Again, very much appreciate all the people that are here, my colleagues that are here, and certainly this panel who has been so helpful to us today.
Regarding the manufacture, which we refer to as mass manufacture of ghost guns, that is a federal issue. The key thing here is to make sure that the federal government gets involved.
Do you have confidence in that?
Not at all. The thing is, when it comes to mass manufacturing of ghost guns, that, like I said, that is a federal issue. The federal government requires anybody who is manufacturing guns for resale to be a manufacturer, and that is another whole ball game as far as licensing above the level that we are licensed. We are licensed as a retailer. We cannot build guns. Okay, if you want to build guns, you have to get what they call a 07 manufacturer's license, which carries a higher cost, a lot more paperwork, a ton more paperwork and requirements and such, as far as the number of guns that you produce, and then there's collecting of the taxes for it, the excise tax at 11% per the value of each gun value that you sell. I see as a dealer, we get bulletins every Friday from the ATF as far as news releases that they do. And one of the things we see on there is ghost guns. It's gotten to be a big thing nationwide, not just here. You see that they do prosecute it. I don't know if they're prosecuting as much as they should or what. I do know that the ATF has their own laws that they are interested in making sure that dealers adhere to. I have heard from many different people over my career in selling guns that the ATF really isn't that interested with the adherence to state laws when they do an audit on a dealer. They're mostly interested in the federal laws. And when it comes to ghost guns, that's a state thing as well. They have to look at that too. And good luck with it. The ATF marches to their own tune, as does the FBI. And it is ghost guns is a big thing. But like I said, the big thing is we cannot take that right away from a law-abiding, non-prohibited person, because it is our right not to make mass producing of them, to make a gun for our own use. Okay, it is our right. It has been for forever. And so we want to make sure that however we address that we don't tread on the rights of law-abiding people and our zeal to take to find a solution. There's got to be a solution somewhere, but we can't tread on the rights of law-abiding people for that. Regarding the AR rifles that you mentioned, that's a big thing. Because on July 19th, 2016, I went to work that morning. I did not know anything about this, and I open up at 10 a.m. and I usually get there about 9:30 to clean the floors and sweep up and do this and get everything ready. And my parking lot was full, and people were lined up at my door. And what the heck is? And people come in and they went right to where I had my AR-15s. They cleaned off the wall. I had maybe 12 of them here or so. and they're all lined up by him. And the little inner voice in my head, which I try to keep in my head, spoke out, "What the heck is going on?" And guy across the counter said, "You didn't hear?" And that's when he told me about what Attorney General Haley had done with her reinterpretation of the Assault Weapons Bill of 1994. I don't think that she had, it was within her purview of her office to do that, but she did. And who are you going to complain to? Well, we tried, and we complained to various channels, and we got shot down. But you are right, that is a great home defense firearm. It is no different than any other semi-automatic firearm. It is no different than any other single-shot firearm or a double-barrel firearm. It is a firearm. And in the proper hands, it is nothing more than a tool. In improper hands, it is no more dangerous than any other firearm. Can you put more shots through it with a single pull of the trigger? No. One shot per pull of the trigger. Okay. That's an issue. It is a great home defense firearm. It is the most popular firearm in common use today, and that is the big thing, as referred to by the Supreme Court, in common use. I don't know what the solution to that is. I do know that it hasn't. I don't think that things since her change of the law in 2016, which is 7 years ago now, I don't think that the situation in Massachusetts has gotten better or worse. I don't think anything changed, which would tend to lend credence perhaps to the idea that maybe it wasn't a problem to begin with. I don't know. This is my opinion and my opinion only. We are all entitled to an opinion, and I think I want to thank the state and the House and everything for putting on this. This is the first one of these that I've been to, and I was absolutely thrilled when Representative Barrett invited me. I am of the opinion that everybody has the right to an opinion. But I think that we all have to do exactly what we're doing here today and talk about it and have peaceful discourse about it without thumping our chests and getting all upset and saying that they're evil and other people saying no, they're not and such. I think this was a pleasure being here today, is all I can say.
I don't think we could end on a better note. I want to be respectful of the Chief's time as well, given the multiple roles you're playing today. So let me close that on the words of Tom and express my gratitude again to everyone who came out here today, who's been with us on the tour throughout the Commonwealth. The discourse we've heard at times is obviously passionate, but at all times during this tour has been civil and instructive, certainly to us. So let me thank Chief Stroud for your words and your service, and Mr. Decker for your words and your intelligence and sharing your experiences with us as well. To my colleagues here, Representative Picantelli, Barrett, and Father Bouvier, thank you for bringing us out. As I said, it was the first request we had in the state, and it was the cherry on top of our tour. So great appreciation to you all for coming out, and to everyone in the audience here who shared their thoughts, everyone watching at home, and everyone who participated in this tour. We truly appreciate it. Thank you all.